Welcome to Focus Today. I'm Steve Johnson. You know, anytime that somebody's been in business for a long time, you probably have an opportunity to gain some wisdom from what they've done over the years that you might be able to incorporate in your own business, maybe in your own life. Well, Perry Atkinson had the chance to sit down with one such businessman in Oregon who has had his business for 30 years now. It's the 30th anniversary for our guest, Gregg Sorensen, here on theDove.
Well, today's a very special day on Focus Today. We are here in the showroom of Southern Oregon Subaru, Volvo, Mitsubishi. Now, why are we here? To talk to Mr. Gregg Sorensen, who's the general manager of this fine establishment, and to talk to him about 30 years of being in business and how his faith has helped him with all of that. So, Gregg, nice to see you, and congratulations.
Thank you, Perry.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
You got some, the new one and the old one.
I do.
Subaru.
Yes, this is a 1970 Subaru van. Right?
Yeah.
And this is a 2013 Subaru Outback.
Wow.
And the differences in the technology in the cars is just so like night and day. It's huge difference.
So when did Subaru first come to America?
1969.
Okay.
Yeah. And we've had the franchise for 30 years, since '83. And prior to that, there were a couple of other people in town that had the franchise. And I think it first came to Medford like early 70s to mid 70s. It was Monty and Marv's Subaru.
Right,
Remember that?
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And our first location was downtown where Pacific Survey is, right next to North Chuckwagon.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We were there for about 8-9 months, and then we moved into the old Chevrolet facility, which is now Road Community College. Right? And
now, you moved your business about as many times as I've moved mine.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Well, 30 years, that's quite an accomplishment, and you've been through several ups and downs of the economy.
Yes.
You've been all over this auto industry.
Yeah.
Is it secure, the auto industry, you think?
Oh, yes. It's the auto industry is really on an upward movement right now because of the fact that there's a huge pent-up demand from people hanging on to their cars longer than they typically did because of the recession. So,
and you've seen all the technology from that to where it is today.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
the electronic stuff.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
You know, our first saying was, the Subaru was inexpensive and built to stay that way, right? Well, I don't know how you compare that in today's terminology with all the new safety features and all the new features of the vehicle and the fuel economy and all that stuff. And so it's just a totally different animal, you know.
Well, you know, one of the things that's a challenge in business today is I'm sure you've had those moments where you wonder, why am I in business?
Yeah.
You know, but how has your faith, I know that you serve the Lord and He's been very faithful to you, but how has that played into you managing a business for 30 years?
I look at it as being a steward, okay? You got to relate to the fact that, in my opinion, God owns everything.
Good.
Okay? And that being a good steward is really what we're in charge of, right? He can take it all away in a minute, right? And so that is basically what I've tried to do, and I've been very fortunate. I've had wonderful partners that have supported me and taken good care of me, and I've enjoyed 30 wonderful years of that. But I think that attitude of being a steward and not trying to hang on to it too tightly as though it's yours is an understanding. And so I've really tried to gauge the way I do things around that premise, okay? And so I think that's helped me a lot in the way that I run my business. You know?
Well, sometimes it's hard to transition from being a business owner to where you really let God own it.
Oh, it's a constant thing that I don't think anybody ever really gets to that point and says, okay, go for it, it's yours, go for it. Yeah. But I mean, if you have to, you try to take that attitude, and I look at it in my giving, right? Our pastor Sunday did a great job in regards to this whole premise of tithing, right? Yeah. If you claim that God owns everything, all right, and all you have to do is give 10% back, well then God's pretty generous. You get to keep 90.
Yeah, right.
And so that's the way I really look at things, and I get a great deal of joy from helping, leading, and I think the higher you get in an organization, the more of a servant you become. And I think that you have to really have a servant's heart, not taking away from the fact that people need to be accountable, and you need to make people accountable for what they do. But there's a lot of joy in seeing people develop, becoming stronger people, strengthening families.
Have you ever had your faith challenged running this business?
No, I can't say I have in regards to somebody just challenging me.
Well, you know, I mean, sometimes it just gets hard.
Oh,
meeting
it does
all
get
the
hard.
demands
Yeah.
and the stresses and
Yeah.
I mean, how big of a staff do you have here? How many employees?
About 60 now.
60. So
Yeah,
I mean, that alone is.
You know, you always have someone that's has an issue or in crisis of some kind. So
Yeah.
you know, you try to look at that and try to help them. So challenge my faith in the regards to. I just feel blessed that I'm here and have an opportunity to do this.
That's
I really
wonderful.
do. Yeah.
You know, so often running a staff of 60 people, there's a fine line on how, in today's world, and with all the issues that we deal with, laws and everything, you want to help, but can you help, and should you help when you're dealing with employees?
Well, there's only a certain amount that you can do, but you can certainly try to improve their working conditions and support them in whatever ways that you possibly can in regards to upholding them, making sure that they get what they need to develop themselves and become the best that they can be in their jobs. And I think that spills over into families. I really do.
You know, the other thing is, and one of the reasons, 30 years is just an incredible accomplishment. When or how do you see selling cars as a ministry? Well, because a lot of people, I think, in business think, I work over here, but I'm going to go on a mission trip over here. Few understand that wherever God has you, that's your mission field.
It is, yeah. Well, I think that everybody has to have a car. Okay? Okay, so there's your mission field in the sense that you try to provide good quality products, create value from whatever you're doing for that individual, treat them fairly, right? Treat your employees fairly. I'm very fortunate that I have a lot of really good long-term employees. In fact, I've got several that started with me.
Really?
Yes. And then there's a whole bunch of that 60 that have been with me over 20 years. So that in itself really creates an environment for success.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you want to help people more than you possibly can.
Yes.
And that can become a little bit of a struggle.
Yes. Yeah. No, you have a responsibility to your partners and to the corporation and actually to the rest of the families here to run a successful business, keep a certain margin going so that everybody can prosper and lead their lives, and that up and down of that can be a challenge at times.
Do you, when you look at God's way of managing money versus maybe what some of the great MBA schools are teaching us today, there seems to be a pretty big conflict there, you know. How did you transition God's financial management into your business and even into your personal life versus maybe what you were taught in school?
Well, again, back to my partners, I'm fortunate that they have the same philosophy of staying out of debt, right? Being debt-free, living debt-free, and managing yourself personally. In other words, don't be slave to the lender, like Proverbs says, right? And I don't know if you know this or not, but I teach Dave Ramsey's financial class at our church, along with another fellow, and trying to help young people get established and using money the right way.
Well, that's a big issue.
Yeah.
And Are you able to share those principles with any of your customers along the way? Kind of, sort of, maybe not?
Well, it depends. Yeah, probably not so much that in regards to, because you don't want to get into a position of trying to control their lives too much. But, I mean, if they certainly ask,
yeah.
I've had customers ask, and I certainly share some of those things, you know.
You know, the cars business has always been fascinating because a lot of advertisement goes into your industry, a lot of competition among makes and brands. For the most part, you sell a foreign product and competition with the American product. Is there still a camaraderie in that? I mean, in spite of that, the industry gets along?
Well, I would have to say in this area that we get along well with each other. We actually have a New Car Dealers Association that we meet every other month, and we sit down and discuss things that are going on in our industry that might be affecting our businesses. And we do have a very cordial group locally. I can't say that maybe for every city, but at least locally we can do that. Yeah.
So what's Subaru telling you the future is?
Oh, yeah, they're running at capacity, and they've broken ground at their plant in Indiana. Excuse me.
So they're going to have a plant inside the United States.
We have had one since 1990.
Okay.
That's where the Legacy and the Outback and is built, and the Tribeca. And they're expanding that plant because they're selling everything they're making, right?
Yeah.
And so but that's going to be 2 years away before that's actually on board, and they're going to manufacture the Impreza there as well, because right now it's all in Japan.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Let me take a quick break. We're talking to Gregg Sorensen. He is General Manager here at the Southern Oregon Subaru Volvo Mitsubishi, his 30th year anniversary. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Okay, we're back with Gregg Sorensen here at Southern Oregon Subaru Volvo Mitsubishi, and we're talking about his 30-year anniversary here with this organization and leading a group of fine employees, over 60 employees, 30 years with selling Subarus, and in particular how his faith helps him in business, and he uses his business really as serving the Lord in many capacities. And I just find that so refreshing because so many people use their job as just, well, this is what I do so I can go do something else. They don't see the job as the mission field.
Right.
And you see it 24/7 as your mission field.
Yeah. One of the things that I'd like to reflect on maybe just a little bit is that growing up in a strong Christian home,
yeah, right,
and a strong Christian family, extended family, I was the oldest of 23 grandkids. Okay, 23 grandkids on my mom's side.
You threw a rock up on that house and kids ran out for a half hour, right?
Oh man, we had a lot of fun. But you grow up with aunts and uncles and parents that instill a work ethic in you and challenge you to do what's right for people, right? But at the same time, develop yourself and try to be as fair as you possibly can. And I think that really kind of starts a person out the way they need to go.
Wow.
And I see it so seldom, you know,
well, what a message that is.
Yeah.
What a message that is. So
yeah.
The old saying is, train up a child in the way it should go, and it's old it won't depart.
Right.
So do you remember things that you were taught as a family?
Oh yeah.
23, you say 24?
23 grandkids. I was the oldest of, yeah.
That is just absolutely wonderful, because that became the foundation.
Right.
For what you're doing.
Right.
Do you see being in business as you are among your colleagues in this industry, outside of your partnership, but just other people, do you share with them your faith?
Yes, I do. In fact, I'm involved in what's called a 20 group. And that's a group of 20 Subaru dealers. Then we get together 3 times a year. And fortunately, there's quite a few people in that group that are Christians that I'm able to share with and talk to.
It's just so refreshing, because it seems like there is an underground evangelistic outreach going on that people don't even know. I mean, it's, you know, outside the church, in the business community.
Exactly, right.
I want to come back to Subaru just for a moment. We were talking a few moments ago that you said this year's surprise is the new Forester.
Yes.
What'd they do? What's the deal?
Well, they restyled it. They put the CVT transmission that's been in the Outback for the last 3 years in it to improve fuel economy, and with that restyling and the transmission, it's been very, very popular. It was just named one of Consumer Reports' best choices, and it's got 5-star safety rating. The problem is it's just keeping up with the demand right now, and I'm actually selling everything that I'm getting and then pre-selling what I've got coming in. So that's not a bad spot to be.
No, it's not a bad spot at all. How does that work? I mean, you're allocated so many cars a year or a month or what?
Per month.
Per month.
Yeah, based on what they call your travel rate. Okay, so the more you sell, the more they're going to give you. Right. Right. But it takes a little time for that to catch up.
Right.
Yeah. So
now, is the Forester made in the United States, or is that still?
It's made in Japan.
In Japan. Now, interesting story about that you maybe share with us. The tsunami affected your business big time.
Yes, it did. We were way short of product there for quite a few months, and it just really disrupted things. So
parts and everything?
Parts, everything.
What'd you do?
Well, we just...
You pray more?
We sold a lot of used cars.
Yeah.
Yeah. We try to shore the things up with a lot of used cars, and then we just... But God was faithful, and He blessed the business even during that period of time.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, just back to being a Christian businessman, to me, it is so important that in this economy and with all the confusion that's going on in our culture, and you know, you and I talk privately about how messed up things are.
Yeah.
What an opportunity to shine for Christ, to do things the right way. Certainly it's noticed.
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to, again, what the persona that my partners and I try to present in the marketplace, right? Is to illustrate and demonstrate that things can be done in a good, ethical fashion without a lot of issues, and you're treating people with respect and trying to help them at the same time fulfill their needs. Are we perfect? Absolutely not. I think the key there, though, is if we understand we've messed up, that we try to make it right with people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of responsibility in a product coming and going. I don't know how the flooring thing works. You know, that's part of your business. It's kind of always has interested me. But when a car is bought, at what point does the manufacturer get paid? I mean, because it goes through a lot of transactions.
The minute it's delivered.
Really?
Yeah. Really? They draft the bank, and the bank then sends them the money.
Really? And that,
for the car.
Then it's done.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing I've noticed is the time to buy a car has shrunk.
Yeah.
In other words, you don't come in here and spend all day buying a car anymore.
Right, right.
I mean, you can get somebody in and out of here in a couple of hours.
Depends on how quick you want to move.
But the other thing is, tell me how the digital world is affecting your business, because a lot of people are shopping online.
Yeah.
Buying online.
Yeah.
Tell us how that works.
Well, what we're finding out, right, it's not so much buying online, but what people do is they gather the information about whatever products they're interested in. So they come in armed already with a lot of information that they never used to have, okay? And it actually makes our job a little easier, because we do communicate with people on the internet if that's the way they want to do it, but most people will choose to get the information on the internet and then come to the dealership and then say, I'm looking for stock number such and such, or I see that you've got this car and I'd like to drive it. So, and then we do a good product demonstration and create value for people. And
so your website is kind of like a multi-salesperson.
It's a conduit to bring people in the store. Yeah.
That's got to be a lot of work. Keep that fresh.
Yeah, which we have employees that do that.
More people.
More people.
Do you see buying online continuing in the future?
Yes.
Because one thing I've noticed, people who do it, they'll shop your inventory and they'll check out everything and do all the comparisons of the features and everything else. And then at what point, and how risky is it for you to quote a price on the internet, because you know they're probably doing that with another dealership in town?
Oh, we have to. Really, you know, at some point you say, okay, well, they're going to want a price, so let's give them a price. Yeah.
Okay.
You win some, you lose some.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
and we try to keep the business local, you know, as best we can. But we found also that there are some dealers that will lose money to sell a car, and we're still trying to figure that out.
As a Christian businessman, how do you manage your time? You know?
Well, a lot better than I used to.
Okay, that's where I wanted to go. What did you used to do? Put in 100 hours a day? And
well, I used to put like probably 70 hours a week in, you know.
I get that.
And if I was going to go back and do something different, I would probably have changed that, because it was hard on the family.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the dynamics of that whole thing. But,
yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you do now? How do you handle 60 employees, inventory, your own personal time, your own personal devotional time? I mean, all of a sudden the day's gone.
I dedicate a lot to that to my son Chris now.
Oh, you got to have, you bring the family in.
Exactly.
Yeah. By the way, he went to dealership school.
He went to Dealer Academy. And
I understand that's really tough.
Yeah, it is.
What happens there?
Well, you go back and you spend 6 weeks, not all at one time, but 1 week each for 6 times, and they give you a different topic, and then you come home for 8 weeks with a challenge to study and an assignment, and you go back and there's rigorous testing that goes on, and once you complete, then there's a graduation ceremony, and it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, I heard it's pretty grinding.
Yeah.
But is that a prerequisite to owning a franchise?
No, but I think it should be.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that some
not everybody's just, you know, can sit down and run one of these places. I tell you, and it's getting more and more complicated.
Okay. Let me talk to you personally a little bit.
Yeah.
What do you think is happening in our culture? What's your view of it?
It's to me, it's so sad that so much of it's deteriorated in regards to what the beliefs that we had as kids and the way that we look at our nation in regards to just the moral aspect of things, you know, and how everything's just kind of deteriorating around us.
Do you feel sad or responsible for that as an individual?
Sad. Sad. I mean, I think we're all responsible.
Yeah.
I think we're all responsible to a certain degree. Yeah.
You and I are about the same age, and in our generation we have watched this thing accelerate under our nose. I mean, at a level that we're still kind of going, how did this happen? Why is it happening? Why is there seem to be such an attack on God in America? You know?
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
Sad. Really sad.
Because it's mind-boggling.
It is.
Do you think that what's happening in Washington now becomes an opportunity in your business as well as ours to share Christ? Because people, you know, the two questions we're hearing at theDove is, who can I trust and what is truth? I mean, that really opens the door, doesn't it?
Oh boy, it really does. Yeah. Well, I think that as people, you know, you see it in the apathy and the number of people voting, and in regards to, they don't believe that anything can really be done through that process anymore, and that's sad because it really can be if it's done right.
Yeah. The numbers prove that.
Yeah.
Well, Gregg, thanks.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
30 years. And what's your next 30 going to do?
Oh, well, you know, I've had a lot of fun doing this, but hopefully there's going to be some other kinds of fun this week.
Well, you know, I do know one thing in the Bible. You won't find the word retirement.
Right.
And you won't find the word quit.
Right.
It says occupy till I come. So I think you're going to be around for a while.
I hope so.
Again, congratulations.
Thank you.
Nice to have you.
Thank you.
Congratulations to Greg and the whole crew there. 30 years, that's quite an accomplishment. Well, coming up on Focus today, we are going to take another look at terrorism, not abroad, like you'll see in the news headlines, but terrorism here, with a review of the Boston Marathon terrorist attack, and a guy who's been doing some investigation on that. You've seen the show Stakelbeck on theDove TV. We'll be talking to Erick Stakelbeck coming up on Focus today.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Welcome back to Focus today. I'm Steve Johnson, and we have as a special guest a guy who you see on theDove TV, Erick Stakelbeck, with his show Stakelbeck that we aired on Wednesday at 8 p.m. and Saturdays at 10 p.m. And in fact, the focus of Wednesday's show is partially what we're going to be talking about today, that you can also watch this weekend, Saturday at 10 p.m. Erick, it's great to have you with us. You're from the CBN studios right now, aren't you?
Yeah, I am, Steve. It's great to be back with you.
You, I think, have taken a look at some of the terrorist activities of late in Boston that I think other investigators probably haven't done. You know, we're seeing terrorism a more frequent occurrence here in the United States, and I really don't want to say that we're getting used to it, but whereas it used to be something abroad, we're seeing it now more localized, of course. And I think a lot of the attention has focused on the two brothers specifically in the Boston area who were involved in that. Your show, though, most recent one, you're looking a little bit deeper than that to find out the motivation behind this Boston terrorist activity, correct?
Steve, great point. Hey, look, everyone's talking about, okay, where were these two young men radicalized? These two Boston bombers, these Islamic terrorists, killed 3 people, wounded 264 more, shut down an entire major American city for the better part of a week. How did this happen? How did these young men, seemingly assimilated into American society, become Islamic terrorists? Well, one of the places I immediately look, Steve, is where did they attend mosque? Now, no one in the mainstream media was asking that, right?
Right.
We know there's a track record in America, in Europe, of young Muslims being radicalized inside mosques behind closed doors. So what I did when I went to Boston, Steve, is I went to the mosque where the Tsarnaev brothers, the Boston bombers, worshipped. What I discovered is this is a mosque with a sordid history. Not only the Tsarnaev brothers attended that mosque, the mosque was founded by a convicted Islamic terrorist financier, and other, including an Al-Qaeda member, other terrorists have worshipped there over the years. This is serious stuff. And then I dig deeper, Steve, and I find that the Muslim Brotherhood, surprise, surprise, a Muslim Brotherhood-linked group owns this mosque. So look, I'm not saying that the Tsarnaev brothers were radicalized at this mosque. We can't say that for certain. But what I am saying is it probably didn't help matters much that they were attending there, given the radical track record. And that's a big problem around the U.S. in my investigations that I found. Many American mosques have not all, but many have a radical agenda.
You know, it points, I think, to the issue of our news coverage in general, and I think we've seen a shift away, whereas a few years ago, had any kind of an organization, let's just use it in that term, been behind the activities of a couple of individuals who had criminal actions that resulted in deaths, I think our news media would have been investigating those organizations. But it seems as if there's almost a protection, maybe it's unwritten, of the media to investigate Islamic activities. Is that what you found?
Absolutely. You know, I have a book coming out, Steve, called The Brotherhood, all about the Muslim Brotherhood, how it's spreading its tentacles. And one of the things I point out is at every turn, the mainstream media and the Obama administration are covering for the Muslim Brotherhood, covering for radical Islamists, and they refuse to closely examine Islam itself as a religion, as an ideology, and look, frankly, how it's motivating the violence we're seeing. The terrorists who are doing these things are quoting the Quran. They're quoting Islam's core text. I wish it wasn't so, but that's how it is, and we need to face that and face what's going on here. Look, with the mosque voting craze, Steve, around the country, and the number of mosques in America, people might not know this, in the past 12 years has doubled. Since 9/11, the number of mosques has doubled. A lot of times these mosques, mega mosques, multi-million dollars, are built in small towns in America. When locals protest, the Obama administration, one of the things I point out in my new book, Steve, the Obama Justice Department is actually intervening in these cases on the side of the mosques. That's a serious thing, and many times these mosques, as I said, are run by Muslim Brotherhood-linked groups. We have a big problem on our hands when the media and our own government is actively aiding and abetting the enemy in many cases.
I would imagine that you and your investigators are probably saying, you know, we uncovered this. Other people should have been able to uncover this as well, but nobody's really talking that much about it, the behind-the-scenes aspect that I'm mentioning here. Why do you think there is this covering? I can't think it's a Republican versus Democratic type of a thing. What do you think is behind that mindset, perhaps?
I think, number one, rampant political correctness. It is going to be the death of us as a society. The culture of political correctness, where you can't criticize any aggrieved minority, you can't examine them, you can't call them out when they do something wrong. That's a big problem. Number one. I think number two, for the hardcore left, and I consider our president a man of the hardcore left and his administration, and many members of the mainstream media. They see Islam, and they see not only an aggrieved minority in their eyes, but they see a religion, an ideological system that isn't Western. It's not Judeo-Christian. At the end of the day, the radical left, the hardcore left, and hardcore Islamists, in many ways, both want the same thing in that they want Judeo-Christian Western values turned on their head. They want the traditional American system turned upside down. They want the U.S. Constitution turned upside down. So as different as they are, Steve, they kind of share, in that sense, they share that they both want a different America, radically different from what we know. Now, the Islamists want Sharia law, and the leftists, I'm not sure what they want, a socialist utopia, I guess? I'm not sure. But at the end of the day, they both share a common enemy, which is traditional Judeo-Christian Western values. Now, also at the end of the day, Steve, it has to be mentioned, the first people with their heads on the chopping block were Sharia law ever to take hold here in the U.S. would be the liberals and the leftists.
Oh, really?
Well, look, the leftists look, say what you want about radical Islam, it's not very liberal, as you know. It's look, homosexuality, things like that the hardcore left supports, atheism, etc. Radical Islamists are fiercely opposed to that.
I gotcha.
So,
I see. Yeah.
The decadence and everything else that the left promotes, the Islamists aren't having that, to say the least.
Just want to mention we're talking to Erick Stakelbeck. His show on specifically focusing on the jihad in Boston will be on theDove TV this Saturday at 10 p.m. if you missed it on Wednesday. So mark that down, Saturday, 10 p.m. Let me just further what you just said there. Do you think then that those people who think that they are perhaps aligned with the whole freedom of everybody's right, nobody's wrong, let's embrace this jihadist activity because how can we possibly be opposed to them? Do you think that there's going to be a backlash at some point, or I think some of us thought it should have happened before now that people would have realized this, but is there just a denial perhaps of what the agenda is?
Well, here's a good case study for you, London, and what just happened there. And before I say that, Steve, I just want to say, I'm not saying the hardcore left is supporting jihadist terrorism. What I am saying is in many cases they're supporting more what I call the stealth jihad, where it's Islamists, not necessarily terrorists, but radical Islamists trying to undermine Western society and chip away at Western society and Judeo-Christian values. That's more what I'm saying. So they're joined in that effort, but I'm not talking terrorism. But in terms of a potential backlash, look, I think if there are more Islamic terror attacks on U.S. soil, and the government's not acting and acknowledging the threat, then the American people are probably going to get a little impatient and say, hey, and they'll hold their government accountable, I think, first and say, what are you doing about this? I mentioned London. A few weeks ago, Steve, we saw a British troop literally beheaded in the street in London by two radical Islamists yelling Allahu Akbar. Now, I can tell you for a fact, and the British media is not reporting this, but there is major discontent among the average Englishman on the street over there in Britain now in the wake of this attack. People are fed up. They're fed up with how you think it's bad here. I mean, this is nothing in the U.S. compared to Europe and how vocal the radical jihadists are in Europe. I've been there. I've interviewed them face to face, Steve. They are out in the streets of London, calling for Sharia law in Britain. I mean, it's open. It's out there. The Muslim population, they're very aggressive. They're much more far advanced than we are now. I think you're going to see civil unrest in Britain eventually. I really do. And I pray that we never see that here in America. But I fear that we're kind of heading down the same road, maybe 5, 10, 15 years, if things continue the way they're going and our government continues to not only not acknowledge the enemy, but in many ways, whether consciously or unconsciously, assist the enemy in its goals.
Well, let me mention the show one more time so our viewers and listeners can tune in to it. Jihad in Boston with Erick Stakelbeck. It'll be a Saturday at 10 p.m. on the Dove TV, so you want to tune in for that. Erick, thanks for being with us. Appreciate that.
Steve, thanks a lot.
All right, coming up, we're going to be talking to the author of a book on leadership. Do we need more leaders in our society, do you think? We'll find out what he has to say about it. Coming up on Focus today.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at the Dove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on the Dove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Well, welcome back to Focus today. Steve Johnson in for Perry, and I've got an author with us, a local author who's written a book called The Leadership Rock, A Journey of Life in Leadership. It's Garris Elkins. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
You wear various hats here. You've written several books. I want to hear about those. You're also the senior leader at the Living Waters Church, and you're a mentor and a storyteller. I guess that's what you have to, if you're going to write a book, you got to be a good storyteller, right?
I think I got that from my father.
Is that right?
He was a storyteller. Yeah.
Well, now you've written several books. This latest, The Leadership Rock. The other two are what again? The titles?
Prayers from the Throne of God, and it's about our position at the right hand of the Father in Christ, and to examine what it would be like to actually pray from that position to earth, while we would not abandon prayer from earth to heaven. Paul said that we're seated there. It's a reality now, so why would we not explore it? So that's what the book Prayers from the Throne of God did.
Was that your first one?
It was, yes.
Okay.
And then this book, as we were building the manuscript for this book, we had each chapter begin with 4 or 5 proverbial statements about life and leadership and ministry, and decided to pull those out of the book and make a standalone book itself called God Whispers. And that one we brought out about a month and a half ago, and then this just was released.
That's pretty prolific to have a book every month and a half.
Well, it was actually it was actually one, and we just busted it up. So
cool.
Prolific is probably an overstatement, but thank you.
All right, now you've got a lot of stories here. You've got over 40 stories. Right. Are these like real life people who you've talked to?
Well, actually, it's out of my life, and I wanted to leave behind either disciple something to leave behind, or you write it. And I've left behind some lives, and I wanted to leave behind some stories. And so these are the successes and failures, probably more failures in how God redeemed me than some book of success. And that's what I wanted to write, something that gave people an understanding of here's the reality of life and ministry.
Well, and the truth is we probably learn a lot more from our failures than our successes, don't we?
Absolutely true. I know I have.
As long as you don't let them become a negative and turn them into a positive, that's good. Well, let's see, A Journey of Life in Leadership, The Leadership Rock. I'm obviously seeing the theme there of leadership. Do you think, a lack of leaders today?
I think we have not a lack of leaders. Maybe many of us who lead do not yet understand the full potential that God has given us to lead. I think there's a lot of undiscovered leaders. They don't fit the traditional template of leadership.
Yeah.
But most of those that Christ used in the scriptures did not fit any leadership template at the time either. And I think
that's true. They were the most unlikely. I'm thinking of the disciples who became leaders. They weren't probably at the beginning, but they certainly did become leaders.
Yeah, and that's what I really want people, as they read anything or listen to what I say, is that God has a heaven-given potential, not a man-made potential, but a heaven-given potential based on the Spirit's indwelling our lives to do things with us beyond anything we'd ever dare to ask or hope or think.
Well, you know, I think of the verse that says, it kind of goes back to that, man looks at the outside, God looks at the inside. Now, if we take that to a leadership thing, some people may be, as you say, unlikely leaders. Is leadership, or those who are leaders, let's turn it into that rather than the concept, but the people, do you think that persona is changing based on the way the generations are and how they interact with each other?
I think a couple things. It's like two tracks. One, I think that's what God is doing in His people. And I think secondly, there's a generation younger than us, several generations, that are not going to allow those of us in current leadership to continue on being anything less than authentic. And so,
okay, is that the key word right there? Authentic.
It is one of the key words for me. I think authenticity is really important because it's too easy for me to fake it and fluff it up and make it sound good or me good. And what God wants to do is He just wants us to rest in who we are and be authentic. And I think for me, authentic means just in the moment and real, and not trying to play games or even project upon a person what you think they want you to become.
So I think of being more transparent, more real about perhaps failures and faults as well, which is not normally those things that we expect a strong leader to give the brave face, so to speak, don't we? I mean,
that's
traditionally,
part of the illusion. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I've been a leader for 35 years, and I know what I'm made out of and what I'm not made out of, and I get around a lot of leaders, and some of them have significant visibility on the national scene, and when you get behind closed doors, we cry about the same things, we worry about the same things, we weep over the same things. And there's always an appropriate time to share your challenges, but you need to have somebody in your life or a group in your life that can walk with you in the midst of your challenges. And then there's always the appropriate public venue to share. And I know as I've listened to leaders share from pulpits when they talk about victory over brokenness, I have felt more encouraged to be that kind of a leader myself.
You know, I think of the programs we have on the Dove TV and the Dove Radio, and we're obviously noticing a difference. It happens to be generational, but that might just be because of the times in which we're in, and a younger group coming up. But I am noticing that the whole approach to, as you say, being real to people is much more obvious with some of the up-and-comers. They're willing to say, I've got a problem, and I've gone through this. Let me tell you what I've gone through. And that has not, I don't think, always been true, especially when I think of, let's say, Christian TV 20 years ago. It was the image. And I don't want to make it sound like a negative. I think that's just what they probably thought was what was needed. But that really has changed, hasn't that?
Yeah, I think it's changed because we've buried so many leaders in their marriages and their ministries that I think we're tired of having relational funerals. And I think we're in a time now where most of us want to finish well. And finishing well requires that transparency that you had mentioned. And it's a fearful thing if you've not been raised with it, because you may live in a system that being transparent requires you being thrown away.
I see, yeah.
And so if I'm transparent with you and you throw me away, and I watch that in a few leaders, then why would I be transparent? So we create systems of dishonesty.
And, you know, I think also when we think of leadership, we think of this head of the organization as opposed to dad and mom being the leaders.
Exactly.
Or maybe even a group of friends where there's one person who is clearly the leader in all of this. So it's not this huge hierarchical thing. It can be very much a smaller microcosm of a group of people who want to do something, right?
You'd mentioned fathers and mothers. I think that is critical because the church is organic, it's relational, it's not structural. And the body of Christ is on earth, but the head of Christ is in heaven. So we're the body here. We're not the head. And the body has to relate to each other. If my arm is sick, my foot is going to be crippled, if you will. Any part of our body that's dysfunctional, the rest of it is dysfunctional. So there's only one church on earth, one church, if you will, in the Rogue Valley and within your listening audience. And we need to realize that what is broken in me will become a defect and a limp in you. And we need to love each other through these times.
You know, as a senior leader at Living Waters Church, when you look around, maybe at the youth groups and all the rest, do you find people who you say, you know what, that person is not in that role, but this person really should be or could be a leader and has never been targeted or perhaps has even realized what they have? Are there a lot of unsung potential leaders, you think, out there that need to be tapped in some way?
That's a great point. I think you're absolutely right. I think true leadership is proactive and following the model of Jesus, who walked by a seashore one day and saw some fishermen and says, "Come follow me." He was proactive. And there's ways to say, "Come follow me," not for salvation, obviously, but in the process of leadership. A cup of coffee, a moment in a hallway. I found for myself the significant leaders in my life just would brush by me in a hallway and say, "Good morning, Garris, how you doing?" And I fed off of that for years. So I just want to make sure that I'm seeing things from God's perspective, not from what I think the outcome should be.
We're talking to Garris Elkins, the author of the book called The Leadership Rock, his latest. He just had another one come out a month and a half ago. Let's see. So in 2 weeks, I want to have your version of War and Peace. Okay. Do you think that one of the roles of a leader is when they're in that position to start identifying other people who should be leaders?
Absolutely.
And is that happening, do you think?
It happens in certain pockets. Where there's health, it's happening. Where there's a frozen movement of a church or a ministry, it's not happening. We have this mindset that leadership is a totem pole, that the guy on top either has to die or fall off for change to happen.
That's a good point.
And we add from the bottom.
Right.
But I think the kingdom picture is that you lay that totem pole down and it becomes a lateral playing field like this table, so that you and I can move ahead in our kingdom gifting, so that we can expand the kingdom instead of having these isolated totem pole structures. That's what this younger generation says they want no part of. I've been in meetings when young leaders have said, "Why would we want what you're going to give us?" So right now, we must be handing the model of the ministry over to the emerging generation years before they intercept it or take it on, because they have to create a model that will sustain with them.
That is an interesting point, especially your totem pole idea. Let me further this. We may be having a lot of people who are watching and listening to this who don't identify themselves as leaders, but they can identify others around to say, you know what, this person here really should be a leader. They're able to do things that I can't do. So even as a non-leader, that person can be targeted. Do you think that is the way that we're moving as well, where people are able to, almost the Joseph moment, how, you want me to be the head? I mean, Joseph was the unsung leader, didn't know he was, and it was elevated to that. So is that kind of the mode that you think we should be looking at?
It is. I think that very statement that you made, where somebody says, "I think you should be a leader," indicates the leadership potential of that person, because I am now, by my statement, saying I could follow you.
Yeah. Well, fascinating. That changes the whole definition of something top-down to let's take a comprehensive look around us to who should be the leaders in whatever capacity they need to lead, I suppose. It's almost so vague that it becomes a difficult thing to identify, but I think your book will help do that.
I hope so.
Great. Leadership Rock. Garris Elkins is the author of all of that, senior leader at Living Waters Church, and we happen to have 2 of those books that we want to give away. So if you are callers 9 and 10 at 541-776-5368, we want to get you a copy of that. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Appreciate
for having me. God bless you.
Hi, I'm Jim, and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.